there's always this vision that we were just sitting in our cells all the time. Honestly, a lot of time is spent going to jobs, going to work, and then also like I couldn't write when it was around mealtime, especially like on a holiday. Like a holiday meal, you have to go out to the day room so you can go to chow. They'll call you out at like 9 a.m. and you may not go to eat until noon, but you can't go back to your cell and grab I can't go back and grab my writing material and sit down. Not that there's going to be any place to sit down because the day room's going to be full of everyone wanting to go to lunch. That happens every day.
I was going to say, whenever you first mentioned that whole thing about you everybody thinks we're sitting around our cells all day. I actually at one point, and funny enough, it was during a period of time whenever I was trying to get a comic book done. I was trying to draw one, and I was just noticing how little time I had to do so. And I was wondering where all the time went during the day. I was on the Darrington unit at the time. And so I decided I was going to, make an effort of calculate, sitting really watching my watch and paying attention to exactly how much time is spent doing what. And you'd be shocked at how much time you actually spend just sitting in staging areas, waiting on them to let you go to an everyday scheduled necessity event like showers, or chow. Showers or chow mainly, also things like rec, library, and even jobs. Even a lot of the main jobs that they have in prisons, like the kitchen or the laundry, they stage them in day rooms or other areas that have them wait so that it would convenience the officer whenever the officer comes to pick them up or whenever it's time for them to go. They can conveniently get them all out, but of course it's a huge inconvenience to the inmates who have to sit twiddling their thumbs for 30 minutes, 15 minutes. You can stand at a door for 5 minutes and, very easily. Not to mention just how many times have you been stuck somewhere during count?
Yeah, we get stuck so many times during count. Like for maintenance, there are many times where the maintenance boss, we don't know if the maintenance boss is going to show up at 6 or if he's going to show up after count at 9. We don't know that. But they're always going to call us out at 6, and they're going to have us sit in the day room until that boss comes and picks us up. And sometimes something might happen at the shop. Like sometimes the whole shop will go on shakedown. We won't hear until lunch that we're not going to work that day. So we're just sitting out there just to hear that we're not going to work until after lunch. And that's the only time we'll know. So basically half the day is already gone. And we've just been sitting there that entire time.
Yeah, they do the exact same thing with all of the major jobs that they have in prison. All of the jobs that employ the majority of the inmates are like that. Think about the fields. The fields are woken up before the sun comes up in the morning. They're expected to be completely ready by that point. And then they have them sit in the day room where they sit and wait for who knows how long. And it could be that they're not going to go out at all. And they don't know it. They have them come out anyways and stay there and just sit in the day room until the decision is made. Even whenever they are called out, they're called out. Where do they go? They go to the back dock and stand on the back dock for an hour and a half.
No, that's true.
My point of the endless staging and wasted time in prison. You're really getting off the subject matter. You've gotten way off the subject. I'm really trying to drag this back to comic books.
No, I think
I wanted to ask. Hold on, I wanted to ask you something, Rainey.
Okay.
So when you finished, from the time you finished writing this story to the time that you actually started drawing comics, how much time had passed in between that time?
Years. I had started writing this story. It might have been. It was either 2016 or 2017 as when I had started, and then I started actually drawing. You were the one who kind of pushed me into actually drawing it.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Well, let's tell that story then.
Yes.
So at what point did the whole decision to start drawing hit you? Where did that bug bite you?
That bug has always been
not on
there.
Your body.
Right. No. The bug to draw comics has been there since I was a kid. I drew on everything when I was a kid. I loved drawing. That's how I liked telling stories, was through comics. And a lot of my stories, I had actually one of the first things I was writing in prison was a book that I always saw as a comic. And I wanted to see that as a comic, and I was always seeing it and visualized it as a comic book, but was writing it as a book. But I just didn't think I could do it. I never saw it going there. Then we started talking about comics all the time. And
you and me?
Yes,
you
and
and
me. Yes. Yeah, I got shipped. I was at Dalhart, and then I got shipped to Ramsey, and then I joined the Jewish program, and that's where we met at Stringfellow. So I went from Dalhart is in the Panhandle, and then Ramsey is in Houston. So I went across the state, 16 hours, whatever, something like that, something crazy, and went to Ramsey for a bit, and then came over to Stringfellow, and we met and we were talking comics. We were talking comics first, and then eventually I told you about the Green Lantern story I was writing.
Right, which you let me read, and I was blown away by it. I read comic books, and personally, not a big fan of the Green Lantern stories, although I don't have any problem with any of the characters. I'm not one of these guys that just gets a thing where he doesn't like a character. I just have to admit that I've never read what I thought was a truly inspired version of any of the Green Lantern characters. And so I was kind of nonplussed at first whenever you told me that this is a story about Kyle Rayner, because even though I'm not really a big Green Lantern fan in general, I'm still a fan of the classics. And so I'm one of these guys that feels like Green Lantern is Hal Jordan, and all the rest of them are just something else. But you changed my mind about all that, and you clearly wrote not only the best Kyle Rayner story that was ever written, but you've written the best Green Lantern story that's ever been written, in my opinion. As a lifetime comic book reader.
Oh, well, thank you. And actually I hadn't written it at that point. You pushed me to finish it. As I was going through finishing it, that's when the whole I started storyboarding in stick figures to try and draw out my ideas. And then we started talking about more comic book ideas, about potentially doing more ideas and what would be good ideas. And one thing that kept on coming up a lot was coming up with my own characters and coming up with so that I wouldn't have to rely on Marvel and DC to make good stories. And I could use my own. And at first I was definitely not sold on that idea. I really just wanted to write Kyle Rayner and Spider-Man and those ones, because I thought it was all about the characters. And
yeah, I was the same way. I gotta admit, I was bit by that same idea affected me. But keep on going. I want to hear the full circle story here. It's a good story.
Yeah. So then I started kind of practicing drawing again, started drawing I had a sketchbook. I had accumulated over the years. I had like these little sketchbooks I'd started, and I actually did this in real life too. I would have sketchbooks that I'd draw like a couple things and I'd give up on. Well, I'd start doing that, but this time, because I was reading, you had a whole bunch of comics I could read. I had a whole bunch of comics I was getting in. So I was reading comics even more now. You had put this thing in me of don't focus on the character, focus on the people drawing them. All right. It's not, or the people writing for them. It's not, Planet Hulk isn't about how great the Hulk is. It's about how Jason Aaron writes Hulk. And that's what the story is about. Hulk doesn't buy his nature looks scary. It's because Mark Silvestri can make a scary looking Hulk. And once I started paying attention to that really changed the way I was seeing this. And it was also changing the way I was seeing how to tell the stories. But I was practicing. I was seeing different artists. I was like, which ones am I really liking? Which ones do I want to replicate? And I was practicing drawing in the styles of other artists, finding my favorite panels from books and drawing them and saving them. From those, I was taking those and combining them and then turning them into my own style, which, because I was drawing so much, I was turning into a style that I really liked. And then I wanted to see my own pictures. And then when we started talking about making a new story, I started looking at ways to storyboard without words and do it through just simple pictures, which actually was way more fun to do, and is how I storyboard to this day.
At one point, I had agreed to help you with the story with this Green Lantern story. Not really help you with it, but to start drawing this Green Lantern story for you. And immediately I ran into, as I was reading it, I knew it was going to be a real pain in the ass to do. And I gave you the suggestion of drawing your own, that you need to draw your own comic book.
Yes.
Just so, as a writer from that point forward, you realize what you're imposing upon artists.
Yes, that I do remember that. You told me that, and that was huge. That was a huge shift for me too, because I would have panels. There was like one page, and then this was the page that threw you off. Like I had like every Batman villain on the page in like five different panels. Yeah, fighting.
You had a whole entire 10-page riot going on that had every Batman villain and denizen of Gotham all in. It had to be crammed into every panel, it seemed. They
had to be crammed. I mean, that was the whole point.
Along with Hal Jordan, Kyle Rayner's kids, and I don't think Kyle Rayner was there at that point, but maybe his wife was or something.
No, Kyle Rayner was there. It was Kyle Rayner, Hal Jordan, and Laney the Teen Lantern, who... Yeah, DC, you can't have that one. I created that one, so yeah. But that's
right. Eat your heart out, DC.
You could have had it. But no. So So once I started drawing my own scenes, I'm like, yeah, you can't have like 10 characters in one of 5 panels on a page. You're not going to see what's going on.
That you're one of those writers that likes to cram 12 panels on every page too.
Yes, I am.
Who had many pages that you say that had in excess of 10 panels on them. With a lot going on in each one of those panels.
One big thing I'm going to say that I've noticed too from writing outside versus inside, the way I was learning how to write was from at the back of Why the Last Man. Brian K. Vaughan would leave his scripts in. So I was like going off of his scripts, like how he wrote it. And I was kind of like copying how he wrote his scripts. And that's how I was learning how to write for comics. Whereas now, like, I'm writing stuff and I'm actually like, I'll watch videos and see how people actually write them in real time. And they have I've learned like 5 different ways. I'm like, wow, I need to like try some of these out because they've got some cool ways. One person actually like he draws it on like the corner of a page. He zooms in to one corner of the page, makes it the same ratio as the rest of the page, then draws the panels the way he wants, the simple way that I draw them out. Then when he's ready to actually draw the page, he just selects the storyboard and then makes it fit to the full size page. And then he can draw in all the detail over top of his storyboard, which is I think is really cool.
Yeah, that is really interesting.
And then there's another person who they make a custom canvas and it's this huge, like 100 by 100 canvas. And they do that so that they can see the entire story lay out in front of them, like the entire arc, just lay out all in front of them so they can see the entire thing play out and just zoom in on any point.
I've known guys who have done that. I had a mutual friend of ours whose brother writes comic books. He used to write far off into the future. I mean, he had his stories plotted out years in advance, and he papered the walls of his apartment like some kind of madman or something. Like this panoramic timeline of his character's story that's going years and years beyond where he was right then, where he needed to worry about. Of course, or it's going to change 1,000 times by then, probably. He went to college for writing. Really? He was currently in college to be a writer and had an internship at Marvel Studios whenever this was going on. And here it is. We did it in prison with typing paper and wooden pencil.
Yeah, we did. That's the thing. And now there's an app too that I found too that's like, it's called Endless Paper, and you can zoom in infinitely and zoom out infinitely. So you can have you can draw a picture and then zoom in on the picture and have your entire storyboard inside that image, and then you can zoom in and have another full storyboard within the corner of that image and keep on zooming in infinitely to do that, and then zoom all the way out and then have the whole comic, and then have a whole nother comic on top of that. It
sounds pretty damn cool.
It's craziness. I don't think I could keep track of that, but it's pretty cool. The other thing that I was going to say is we talked about about how much time we wasted in prison. And one thing I was really looking forward to was not wasting time out here. I have taken time off to do this podcast, to get into to making comics and everything. Then also for myself to start off with, because it has been a crazy transition from prison to real life to post pandemic as well. That has all been a lot of crazy transitions all at once.
A lot of change going on all at once, huh?
Yes, a lot. It's a lot of things to get used to.
You have no idea.
I can only imagine with you. I can't even imagine when you get a decent phone that's up to date, how that's going to change everything.
I won't know how to act then.
Right.
When I finally step into the 2020.
Yeah, exactly. But it'll be 2030 by then, so don't worry.
Oh, okay.
But
yeah, we'll really be advanced by then, won't we?
Yeah, exactly. But the thing is I was talking with some people, and really, since we've been really pushing hard on getting this comic done. It's been 3 weeks to get this thing lettered into print. And even though I've been complaining and talking about how much time we've been spending on it and all this kind of stuff, like on the lettering and getting everything done, and I have spent a whole bunch of time on it, but the lettering alone that I did for the comic, there's no way I would have been able to get it done so quickly in prison. That would have been next to impossible. Even if I had an iPad and the software and knew what I was doing in advance. There's no way I could have been able to get it done just because of how much time gets wasted sitting in the day room and waiting around for things and shakedowns and all those random things because you don't have time to do those things. I wouldn't have had time to get the work done.
That book itself is something that I penciled in 30 days. The pandemic helped me get that thing done because in some ways I was still dedicated to doing it. I had began before the pandemic, but I penciled it in 30 days, and then the inking process is what really was killing me with that one. But strangely enough, we managed to get it done. I had to neglect everything else in my life to get it done and focus on that and that alone. But nevertheless, we did it. I don't think I could do it again if I had to, nor would I want to. We're going to laugh at this. I'm in the middle of doing this podcast with you, and Irad has this concert amplifier that he's plugging up in the living room. And did you hear that low rumble that started in the middle of your story there?
I heard a little bit.
He's turning. Yeah, he turns this amp on. Man, this thing's the size of half of a refrigerator.
Hey, that's speaking of refrigerator.
I've been trying to give y'all that refrigerator. Y'all won't take it. Y'all keep bringing stuff in here.
Can you get that little refrigerator? Yeah, not right now, man. I want to close the wall. Oh, okay. We'll get it later.
They'll get it later.
Okay.
All right.
But anyway, the point of that story was just that, seriously, in a few weeks, we took that thing, you had it inked and everything. We took it from paper to now it's at the printing press. It's huge, and
if you really want to get down to it, though, I mean, I could sit there and try to say that it's one of those things that I pushed through in 30 days, but in all reality, it took me 30 years.
Well, yeah.
In all out reality, it took me 30 years. If you want to really get down to it, I started in the county jail at the age of 17. Whenever I first got locked up, it wasn't that I wasn't drawing already or didn't know that I had some talent for it. for it, but I did not dedicate myself to it. I did not strive toward perfecting it until I was 17, until I was sitting in that county jail. And believe it or not, it was right at that point in time in the early 90s. I got locked up in 1991, and my mom, while I'm in the county jail facing a murder charge, she goes on some trip to Acapulco with her boyfriend, and she sends me. There's a magazine that's in the some kind of magazine that they have that's sitting in the little pouch that's on that seat in front of you.
Right.
And she picks it up, and it has an article in there about Image Comics, this brand new company that just came out, comic book company, Image Comics, and it's got big flashy pages of artwork from Rob Liefeld and from all the other guys at Image Comics, right? And it was just absolutely a game changer for me. It just that. I'd already been reading these guys' comic books whenever they were working at Marvel. Like I talked to you about earlier today, I used to read X-Men and X-Force and New Mutants and all that. And those were all the books. Those were most of the books that the Image guys were working on. And then they rebelled. They broke away from Marvel and went and did their own thing. They went through the same thing that you and I went through, where at one point or another they thought that comic books were the characters. They thought that the icon of of Batman and Thor and Spider-Man, they thought that was comics. And then somewhere along the line they snapped. Well, I guess because they're drawing them or they're the ones creating it. Wait a minute, we're not. These characters are nothing. They're absolutely nothing. They're nothing. It's us that's selling these books. Everyone else at Marvel that works at Marvel isn't selling any books. Only we are. It's not the characters. They don't care about the kids. Don't really care about the characters as much as they think they do. They care about the quality of the art and stories that these really awesome guys that were making them were producing. After I read that article there in the county jail, I decided, man, you know what? I'm going to get some comic books in here and I'm going to start drawing. And from that point forward, it was a very long, arduous road to get from there, from an awful amateur to published comic book.
Artistically, though, it shows.
It kept me. I could, in some kind of way, in some ways, you just can't that aspect out of my whole, life in prison type of thing. I mean, it was like a lifeline. It was a beam or something, or a rope that was handed down to me from God to keep me sane, keep me focused on a goal the entire time I was in there. Working on that was the anchor that caused me to be able to get out of prison and function. I mean, not only just get out of prison, be able to function while I was in prison, be able to live, to continue life in that situation.
Yeah, there's a book that I read that actually, after my accident, that was recommended to me, and they told me to read it because they're like, it's like you've been through some trauma, and this is probably something you need to take a look at. And it was Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, who has it's based on his experience during the Holocaust. And he had this therapy that he wanted to write about. And what he's writing about is one part is experience, and the other part is his purpose throughout that whole time there was that he wanted to write about this therapy when he got out. And that was that's what kept him going. And he said, he looked at people and he said there was certain people had a purpose. You could see it on them that they had a purpose, and you talked to them, they would tell you straight up what it was. They wanted to see this loved one when they got out. They had a family to take care of. They had a thing that they needed to do when they got out. And that's what kept them going and pushed them forward. But a lot of people couldn't find that. And he said he could just watch them die. It didn't matter how smart they were. It didn't matter how much they had or could have, or even how late they got to the concentration camps. He had been there for years, and people would show up after him and die, right before they were about to get liberated. He said that was the biggest thing is for people need a purpose in order to keep going. And especially for what you've been through in there, I know Dave and I have talked about it a whole lot. Dave will be on here at some point. Not many people. You
guys are in for a real treat when you get to meet Dave.
Oh, yes, you are. Everyone is in for a great treat for that. Not many guys who have done 30 years can still really relate or still be present with other people. I hate even saying this, but this was a common thing. This is something that I often said. You probably have heard me say it while we were in prison together.
But we would look at some other guys that we know that either had done 25 more or over 30 years that were around us. And I would oftentimes say that there is no one that does 30 years in prison that comes out of it sane. I mean, every last one of these guys had gone nuts being in prison that long. They're eaten up by little things like jealousy and anger and things like that. Just consume them. Or other things. There's other aspects of. I mean, what people just don't understand about prison is that it's a very unnatural state of existence for a human being to be in. And that unnatural state being imprinted upon somebody will make them weird as hell. It can give them all sorts of kinks and neuroses and just twitches and things that it's hard for most people to even kind of wrap their head around.
The Shakedown is recorded in luxurious Longmont Public Media Studios, and our theme song, Shakedown, is provided by Envato Elements.